The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, hello everyone, this is Shir Goldberg with Assure. Let's just wait a few more minutes for people to join the meeting. Okay, so about this webinar. The webinar will be about 40 minutes, Q&A at the end. Please ask any questions in the GoToMeeting as somebody already did. And when you exit, there will be a survey form. So we appreciate if you could answer that. There will be a recording available and you will receive an email for it in a few days. Now, what we're going to speak about is about Assure and specifically about Assure and analytics for QA. We'll talk about creating a business case for automating analytics in QA, and then dive into the ROI calculator where you can see you provide company-specific inputs, estimate the potential savings, identify the cost of a possible solution, and then, of course, calculate and visualize the ROI. Now, what is it that we do in Assure? We provide a single source for enterprise reporting analytics for development and testing. We can reduce costs associated with manual creations of reports by up to 70%, enabling access to reports and sharing them in seconds. They're always up to date, reducing time from status meetings and measuring progress and so on. And of course, reduce the risk. Once you have the data available for you, and it's up to date, you can make better decisions. All right, so who benefits from automating analytics for the QA? Well, first of all is really the operations and program management. Especially the program management, they need to have a holistic view of the project landscape. So you can have large programs with multiple projects, and just collecting this information together, understanding where do we stand and where should we focus can take quite a long time and is often inaccurate. So they end up with a finger in the air decision making, unfortunately. Now the other group is has to do with the product management and the project managers. So they want to know, are they able to deliver on time, on quality? Is there anything that is blocking us? Right? Is the quality improving over time, and so on? And then you have, of course, the development and testing teams. They need the agility and freedom to work. You do not want them to, use their time in creating metrics, right? They should do what they're hired to do. So these are really the stakeholders. Now, just a few words about how we do that, and then I'm going to move on to the webinar's topic. So what we have developed is something called Assure Total View. There are really two layers here, and I'll be brief. There is a total view data. It's an extraction engine. It's fully automated, and it pulls information from different data sources into a single data storage, which is a dedicated data mart. And on top of that, we provide dashboards, which we call Total View Insights. So currently, we have Total View Insights for testing, Total View Insights for Agile, and the Total View Enterprise Insights is actually combining both of them. All right, so our mission is really to simplify analytics, to move from what you see on the screen where everybody does something on their own to a unified, centralized, fully automated dashboard for the enterprise. Okay, so the idea is really to provide by automation, to provide a cross-project analytics solution. Again, it's a drill down, it's metrics that are we see that the industry really needs and looking for it. And it enables implementing really a global metrics framework for your organization. Okay, so really anyone could use that and have access to it. Now, why customers automate analytics? So let's see what we normally hear from customers. The first one is ability to make faster and better decisions. Okay, that's number one. Number two, improve delivery and product quality. When you have better analytics, better metrics, of course, you can deliver things better, quicker, and you have more information about the quality that you deliver things in. Monitor and predict outcomes, so predictability. Implement and utilize standard metrics across the organization. Measure a testing metrics framework, measure maturity, effectiveness, and then increase transparency and planning capabilities. And then the last one here is improve credibility, relationships, and culture. And what we mean by that is turning the organization from a gut feel culture to a fact-based culture. So you get rid of all the, are you sure that what you show on the screen is the actual data? Or when was this collected? Was it today or this is from last week? All of these discussions are gone. All right, so business case. Some elements of a good business case is, number one, understand how much the current situation is costing you. Okay, show how automation solves business problems and try to quantify them. And then, of course, relate to stakeholders' pain points. So you know that you have, when we talk about, again, analytics, metrics, reporting, you have certain stakeholders in your organization who are the consumers of these products, and they are expecting to get the information at a certain time and have it up to date and accurate. Okay, and the last thing, of course, is being an ROI model, and that's where we're going to focus next. All right, so for an ROI, how does the calculation process really works? First of all, we need to collect inputs that are specific to you. Estimate the potential savings you might gain, understand the costs, have some understanding about the assumption of how things are going to work, and then calculate the ROI. Now you can discuss the input values with your stakeholders, try different scenarios, see what the output is, and then do it again with a different scenario. Okay, and you might have, we've seen that you might have several business units. They often are quite independent. So you might have to repeat this exercise with each one of them. All right, so that's the process. Let's start with the first one, provide company-specific inputs. So what we're really looking for is sizing, right? So inputs, they're used as a basis, and we need to understand how many people are in the organization, how many projects are pretty much in flight, how many programs, sometimes the number of applications is important, and of course the hourly cost. So let's jump to the ROI calculator. What you can see here, this is a calculator for TotalView Insights for testing. The input fields have this color, so let's go to the first page, which is the general input. So we can play for a scenario of a QA organization of, let's say, 500 people. Okay, average QA team per project, let's say it's 20. Now what I got from that, I got that we probably have about 25 IT projects that are active. We have maybe 17 applications, it depends on the ratio, and then probably 3 programs that group some of these projects together. Now these numbers, you can change them manually. You can say, okay, I don't have 17, I have 20 applications, and actually I have 4 programs here. Okay, so you can do all of that. The last item is, what's the hourly cost? So what's the average hourly cost resources of the organization? We can put something like, let's say, $55 an hour. So what we actually got, we got a very round number. We are using a year about 1 million hours, which is $55 million budget overall for my 500 people organization. Okay, now these are rough estimates, but it's good enough as a starting point. All right. The next one is really estimate the potential savings, and that's probably the more complex part of this whole calculation and creating the business case. So let's see what we have to do here. So potential savings, there are many benefits that an automated solution can bring, right? Now, some of these savings can be calculated, other ones are very difficult to calculate. So let's split those into 2 groups. We have the quantifiable ones and the non-quantifiable. So the quantifiable, what we have from our experience have identified as things that are fairly straightforward to calculate are, the first one is very simple: reduction in manual reporting effort. How much time you actually save by having an automated solution. The other ones is improvement in defect lifecycle. We know that the defect resolution time and the severity of defects you actually go to release with, both of these will decrease. So there is improvement once you have a good analytic solution. And then improvement on project schedules. That's another thing that we hear from customers. It's very clear. Project schedules are much better. Projects are, how would I put it, less late, right? There are more projects that actually hit the milestones. Now, the non-quantifiable items here are really things that are more abstract, but they can translate into a bigger dollar amount. However, they are not part of the calculation. So things such as changing to a fact-based culture, improving processes, having better planning, right? And really having one version of the truth across the organization. So the next slides would focus on these three items, and we will put them in the ROI calculator. So here they are: manual reports, cost saving. Let's start with this one. So what kind of questions we need to answer is, we need to understand who creates manual reports, who consumes them, how often are they created, how much effort goes into it, right? How we translate it into cost, and how much can we automate. Okay, so we know that these reports are created, consumed on all levels, from anything from daily reports of projects or even teams to quarterly, portfolio, large program reports, and even beyond. The bigger the organization, the larger the programs, the more effort it requires. So let's see what we do on the actual ROI calculator when it comes to the manual reports cost saving. So I'm going to switch to the next tab. And what you see here, let's focus first on this table. So what you see here, I'll give you an example. I know that my projects, they spend about 20 minutes a day. Okay, that's a third of an hour. So 20 minutes a day creating their project report daily. Somebody is spending this time. If you're not happy with it, let's put it 15 minutes a day. Okay. I know my program report is much more difficult and it takes much longer. Okay, let's say 2 hours. Now, I have a weekly project report. So I know I'm spending 2 hours a week on creating a report for my project. I might have monthly report, maybe quarterly report. Okay, maybe these don't take as much. Now I have application report here. Some organizations have them, some don't. Program is really the heavyweight. Because the program is so large, you need to combine information from many sources. Okay, so we say, okay, it takes 2 hours a day. I have a weekly report, a monthly report for my program, definitely, quarterly maybe, and maybe even an annual if it's a large program. Let's say that we don't have the annual. All right. And then we have miscellaneous reports, and these are things that are related to metrics by the Center of Excellence. They want to measure their best practice, their processes, the maturity. Do everybody follow the defect lifecycle process, right? Everybody close defects. How's my test automation doing, and so on. So we just group these together as MISC reports and say that we overall, through our whole organization, right, this is how much time we spend. So what we do next, we automatically calculate and say that if I have 15 minutes for each project, right, then I just multiply it by the number of projects and the number of days. Okay, if I have a weekly, 2-hour weekly, I think we had, let me see, we had 25 projects. So I multiply 2 by 25 times the number of weeks, which is 52, and these are the number of hours I get. So you can see that overall, how this table is calculated. And I can already tell you where we should focus our effort. It's mainly on the weekly reports. This by far would require the most, actually, that's where most of the time is spent. Okay, so the annual manual reporting spent is about 800K in this case. Okay, now if you're not, you can always change those numbers. Now the other thing we say, okay, where are we going to focus our automation and how much can we automate? So what I can say, I know that weekly is very high. So instead of the 70, I would put, okay, I can probably automate 90% of my weekly. And then when I take these numbers, you can see that this is really the automation, the potential for savings by just automating the reports and really doing the cost avoidance on manually creating those reports. Okay, so that's the first item I have, the first number. All right, let's go back to the slides. Now, as you saw, the inputs were the number of hours currently spent on reporting, potential report automation level. This is a quote from one of our customers. We've been able to save 3.5 full-time employees that were dedicated to creating reports. Okay. Now, the next item is defect resolution cost savings. And this is a bit more tricky because how do you calculate defect resolution costs? Can report automation reduce the cost and by how much? Right? And how to translate this whole thing into dollars. So what we did here in the defect cost savings, we actually went and looked for studies that measure the defect costs for organizations. We put all of this in this table. I'm not going to bore you with the details. The only input for this table is the distribution of projects by size. So what you can see here, I say, okay, I have 8% of my projects are very small, 35% are fairly small, 50% are quite large, and 7% are very large. You can play around with these numbers, but basically this is the distribution. Now, let me go back to the defect resolution cost saving. Based on this information, there is another very important input, which is efficiency self-grade. How would you grade the defect fixing efficiency of your organization? Okay, 1 is best, 2 is average, 3 is worse. You can see the vast majority of organizations are either average or worst, unfortunately. And for this example, we can put number 2. And that would translate to this amount of money, really the cost that is put into fixing defects. Now, if I'm really terrible in doing that, you can see now it's 4.3 million. That would go to 9.8 million, so almost 3 times as much. If I think I'm very good, that would be a much smaller amount. Okay. Now the improvement, what would be the improvement impact of having a much better visibility and up-to-date analytics? And remember, having such automation in place enables you to shift left, shorten things, better communication, and removing blockers early. So we would say we can improve maybe 5%. And this is being fairly conservative. So now we have another, so 5% of the defect fixed cost translates to 200K. So that's the second element we can measure. Okay, I'm just checking if there are any questions, and no. All right. Let's move to the next one. Project schedule cost savings. So how do we calculate schedule variance costs? How report automation can influence the schedules, and what improvements can we expect? And of course, translate it into dollars. So what we're doing is this. We will calculate the cost of late projects based on only the involved resources, remember we put the size of the QA. We're not taking into account the impact on the business, on time to market. We don't take into account the impact outside of QA at all. So the actual cost is much bigger. It's just a bit too difficult to calculate. So the inputs are what percentage of projects are typically late, by how much are they late, okay? And what kind of schedule improvements can we expect? Now here we do have experience to fit it in. So for example, if I say that my projects are on average, the ones that are late by 10 days, okay? say, let's say they are late by 2 weeks. And the percentage of projects late, I know in the IT, the percentage is very high if you look at statistics, but let's put it very low, that it's 15% of my projects are late. So the cost for all late projects is almost $500,000. And remember, this is just for my QA organization. Now, based on our experience with customers, we feel comfortable saying that we could reduce this by 50%, either the number of projects late, or actually both, the number of projects late and also by how much are they late. So savings is 231,000. So now we have this element and some quotes from customers. For example, IT saw a decrease in average days late and an increase in number of healthy projects. The other one, from 35% of projects completing test execution by milestone to over 70%. Okay, so basically it was 65% were late and it went down to 30%. This is from actual customers. All right, the next, by the way, we have some questions coming in. I'll answer those towards the end in the Q&A, so keep them coming. The next item is, after we know how this specific, your company looks like. We know what are the potential savings we can fairly easily calculate. Then we can go and discuss the costs of a solution. So let's do that. And the cost of actually, first of all, there is a cost saving summary. So remember, we've done 3: report automation, so eliminating or reducing the manual effort, defect improvement, and then the schedule, right? So projects being on time, we end up with potential savings of a bit over $1 million. Now let's talk about costs. So for costs, we base it, of course, on what we provide, the total view solution. Now you could use this calculator to come up with any other solution on your own. Of course, we would prefer if you contact us first, but I'll explain what we've done. So what I say is this. First of all, we have 20% of your org users in the QA would have access to this system. That gives me 100 users out of the 500. In addition to that, add another 15% for people outside. So you have 115. Now we expect a gradual ramp up, not necessarily a big bang. So let's say first year is 70% of the users, second year 30. So what you get is this. You get license costs that are spread over 2 years. You get software maintenance, okay, which is a year over year, and then you have the total cost per year. This is this row 15. Now this is not the end of it. You do have other costs. This is the software. You have the implementation services, right? So we have those here. We have infrastructure costs. You're gonna need to invest in some sort of servers. And then we have the internal resource cost, the cost of the team that internally is required to ramp up a solution and maintaining up and running. And this is calculated relative to the size of the organization. You can see that the first year is 1.5 full-time resources, and then it goes down to a smaller number. This is actually the biggest cost you're going to have. So now we have the yearly, not license, but this is really the complete, this is the license, sorry. So you have the total cost year over year is right here. Okay. The next one is the solution assumptions. And what we mean by that is that there are several things throughout this calculator that we kind of take a conservative approach. First of all, we say not everything can be automated. The other thing is adoption takes time. Not everyone will be using the solution the first year. And then we have that achieving the full potential savings would take time, right? So we say it's not going to happen the first or the second year. You need to get better, and have better coverage and address the business needs more accurately. So that would take some time. So let's see how these assumptions look in the final screen. So first of all, there are some here. You can see the first year ramp up. I'm going back to the report automation cost savings. These are the levels we expect. Okay, we're not trying to say we automate 100%. And then when we come to the last sheet here, this is the ROI. What you see is this. What percentage of the potential savings can we actually realize? So first you say, okay, 60% of the potential we think, then 80, then 100. So here is what we get. This is the return on investment every year. It's not the return on investment, sorry, these are the savings every year. So you see it goes from 600K or so, and just to remind you, the potential, the full potential is this much, is 1,100,000. And we reach the full potential only year 3 and following that. So this is the return. It's right here, and this is accumulating year after year. Now, as for the costs, we do the same exercise. So these are the costs. These are the costs where you put them again in a cumulative manner. Really, if you subtract the costs from the return, you get really the savings. And that's what you see on the graph. So you see on the first year, it's fairly low, and then it starts growing faster because most of the investment was done in the first year. And we also assume that it's the least, you're going to achieve the least benefit in the beginning. Okay, so this is how the calculator works, and we'll be happy to, if you want to get back to us to put your inputs into here, to change whatever you think needs to be changed, and see what comes out at the end. Okay, so really the last screen is the simple part. There's not really much input in there. All right. So we managed to do it in less than 40 minutes, which is great. So now we have time for a Q&A. So let's see which is the first question we have. Okay, so we have a question. At what point do the projected actual savings enable an investment in Assure? And who from the IT organization should invest? Okay, I would start with who should invest. There's quite a list of people, depends who you talk to. First of all, I think what we see most, such an investment goes hand in hand usually with a central organization or a strong business unit. And what they look for agility, for being able to be quick and get benefits quicker. They feel they cannot measure how they're doing, and definitely for status meetings to know where we stand right now, that's a big problem. You talk to the program managers, which by the way are very important stakeholders, and they would tell you the information we get for our program sometimes is a week old. Okay, so what we see on this in a report that somebody compiles from multiple sources, it's already outdated by the time we get it. So their decision making is not that great. And again, at what point we see investments in automated solution for analytics and reporting, it's really, usually we see it when there is a creation of a test center of excellence, or whether there is a strong QA director, or we've seen also critical IT programs. I'll give you an example. You all remember the Affordable Healthcare Act that created for some healthcare companies or providers, it created a huge IT program, and sometimes the biggest they ever had. They had to get analytics on top to make sure things work properly. All right, I have a question about the pricing of the Assure solution. I won't go in detail into it. We could take it, if you can contact us, we'll be happy to walk you through it. But just basically the license cost is based on the number of users who are using the solution. And the license model can be perpetual as well as subscription. Okay, we have another question about how do we collect all this information. So let me go back to the Excel. The way to collect the information is really talking to people in the organization. Normally we find one stakeholder that is interested to drive this, and they do most of the legwork. Sometimes they would introduce us to explain things. Okay, now many of these numbers you could have a pretty good guesstimate by your stakeholder or champion in the organization, right? So if you have a QA director who's interested in this, he can provide most of these numbers for this screen, and he can get an estimate for these numbers. These are the most critical numbers for the whole exercise to work. All right, I had another question about the size of organizations who normally go for it. So now it really depends what you're looking for. I can tell you that if we go back to the general inputs and we say this is not a 500 people organization, this is let's say 1500, okay? And I go to the ROI, you can see this jumps quite significantly. Automation, of course, the more people are involved and benefit from it, the better. The more time you save, the better ROI. Now, if I go the other extreme and I say I only have 25 people in my Q organization, and let me just change what I've done here. Okay, the ROI will probably be negative, at least in the first year, and not that convincing anymore. But that makes sense, right? You don't automate something for a very small group of people. It's not really worth it. All right, gentlemen, if there are any other questions, I'm happy to take them. So please write them down. All right, so I don't see any other questions. I'd like to thank you all for joining. Remember, there is a survey at the end. I'll appreciate if you can fill it in. It's only 5 questions. And a big thank you for joining us today.